Shovers! Attention builders!
It's happening now at Builder's Paradise!
Everyday low prices just got lower! That's right! Pay just 13% VAT or take a 4% VAT discount off or already unbeatable everyday low prices! Whether you're building, renovating, or upgrading, now's the time to stock up and save big on everything you need! Why wait? These savings won't last forever! Head to Builder's Paradise today and experience even lower prices on everything you love! Builder's Paradise, where low prices just got lower! Don't miss out! Shop now!
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Talk That Get Results. I'm Webbo Herbert, and as per usual, we're here every Tuesday evening with something that at least we think is of community interest and or of some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line and address it to Let's Talk program in Care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Navy. So give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. And by the way, those will be the numbers if you want to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Talk That Get Results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or a comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized, and when you're getting on the show you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we'll not accept anything we deem that's not within our broadcast standards. But we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. Also, you can follow our live video stream on our Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel at Vaughan Radio. Thank you all again for joining us. Your voice in the community, Talk That Get Results. This evening's program is in two segments. The first segment will be talking with the newly installed president of the Nevis Division of the St. Kitts Nevis Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Stephen Hector. Good evening.
Good evening to you, Webbo, and good evening to the listening public. Thank you for having me on your program, The Talk That Gets Results, tonight.
Okay, before we go into what you're here for, Stephen Hector, you used to lock up people, right? You used to be a police officer.
I used to be a police officer.
Well,
it's a much wider field than just locking up.
Yes, but you used to do that.
I used to be a police officer.
Okay. but in that regard, we need not worry tonight.
Need not worry tonight.
Okay,
yes.
But there's something called citizen's arrest.
Of course, yes, definitely.
So not even that we have to worry about.
Well, we are on good behavior right now, so there's not much of a need for that.
Okay, Stephen, it's good to see you. It's good to have you as usual. So now you're now of the Nevis Division of the St. Kitts Nevis Chamber of Commerce, right? Now, why don't we begin by telling us, first of all, what the overall organization is, and then the role of the Nevis Division.
All right, great. I'm happy you actually introduced your question like that. The St. Kitts Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce is an organization within the Federation. We have membership, just over 110, 112 members from the business community. And what we do as a chamber, we are here to represent the interests of the business community in the Federation. What do? We are involved in business advocacy, in that we try to advocate in terms of policies to various stakeholders, including governments, both the federal government and the Nevis Island administration, for our business community. So we basically look at any challenges that might be not necessarily unique to any one sector, but might be general challenges that exist, and we try our best to influence the direction of policy, and when necessary, we try to influence legislation as well. We also are interested in trade, regional trade. We are interested in trade between St. Kitts and Nevis and also trade within the islands. Again, with trade comes commerce, comes business activity, and that is what generates, I would say, cash flow within the country, because persons are reliant on others for what they do, and therefore you have a movement of goods and services. We also involved in business education. We take time out in the chamber to ensure that we can provide some degrees of technical support to our business houses. We put on training sessions ever so often, and we try to make sure that these topics are relevant and topics which can, in fact, how should I put it, provide either leadership, technical training across multiple business sectors. We also are involved in, community and networking. It's very important for us to network. That is how knowledge is shared. That is how we learn from each other's experiences, and so therefore we sort of mitigate the risk of, let's say, the same error repeating itself in the business community. There's also a need for research and development within the St. Kitts Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce. We provide that sort of information that is necessary for investors who may have an interest in doing certain projects within the country, and we're able to provide that sort of knowledge share in terms of the uniqueness or the characteristics in terms of the landscape of St. Kitts and Nevis. I will say this much, that so basically we're looking at opportunities for capacity building among the business community. We're looking for networking. We're looking to improve the facilities and also advocacy in terms of how we pool together as a business community and basically provide what I would term, knowledge improvement for various stakeholders.
Yeah, that last statement that you made in terms of one of the things that you do, and you pull together, to see how we can. And I wanted to engage you on that area, because when you have everyday conversation on Nevis, that comes up in terms of the growth of the business sector, pooling together. A few maybe weeks ago we had a similar discussion here, and one person offered an opinion suggesting that one of the reasons why we don't do that is because we as a people like to say partnership is leaky ship and those kind of things. But I pointed out the contrary of things like the Nevis Cooperative Credit Union, TDC, and you have a few other organizations that amalgamate and provide services. So at the chamber, are you of the view that we have enough of those, or we can do more?
So what I would say to you is that collective effort often bring meaningful change. So it's about being able to come together, pool together, understand the nuances that exist. So you're not necessarily pooling together on the issues of trade secrets. You're not pooling together to basically bring down a sister company or a sister business. What you're doing, you're pooling together and asking yourself, how can we as a group manage the challenges that are somewhat which may not be prevalent, but at least the challenges which are basically that we all face together. And so it's about the business curve, it's about the development curve. If you, Webbo, for example, learned something 20 years into your professional life, then why a business now in its 5th year needs to experience 15 more years of the same problem? It's about how do you make your footprint in the sand so that those who come behind you can actually have an easier development curve.
But are we not exactly guilty of that, though? Sometimes, oft times, trying to remake the wheel?
Well, we don't.
Because even in governments, you hear the experts are now opining that from one government to another, there's hardly any continuity in projects and stuff like that, and as a consequence, it's stifles growth.
And this is exactly where the Chamber of Industry and Commerce and the business community, through collective efforts, can in fact influence the direction of the things that affects businesses in the community. Just to pedal back a bit, Webbo, in terms of the structure, I omitted to say earlier that we have the Nevis division, which is a division of the St. Kitts Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce. We also have a manufacturing division. That division is headed in the St. Kitts. However, the uniqueness about the Nevis division is that even though it's a division of the chamber, it's not of a particular sector. So therefore, whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in financial services, whether you are in the hotel industry, whether, whatever sector you're in, the Nevis division is a sort of multi-discipline division, whereas in St. Kitts you'll have that split separation between the manufacturing and then other sectors will be in that in the chamber as a separate division as well. Just wanted to indicate that.
And I want to ask, as you said, pooling your resources, the Nevis Chamber of Commerce and so on can assist business in sometimes you have something that we call in business red tape.
Yes.
Now, can the Nevis do the Nevis Chamber assist with that?
Oh, yes.
Meaning, for instance, as an example, and some folks are going to, if they follow me closely, they're going to realize that I keep talking about this, and maybe we might end up getting some thought that get results. Because what happens is you have certain what we call local businesses.
Yes.
And they may have certain policies or, let's say, red tape that is hampering the growth of their business. You don't readily get the politicians to address those. On the contrary, when it is a foreign operated business, they do it with speed by going into the house, amending the laws and the red tape, and get it done. So I don't know who speak on behalf of them. So my question, therefore, is, if you are a member of the Nevis Chamber and you run into these policies and red tape, as a unit, their strength is in numbers, can you do that? Maybe in theory, and do you know in practice of any example of it being done?
So, Webbo, I like how you have pivoted me into a great segue opportunity to discuss membership. I have joined the chamber at a time where I think in order for us to be fully effective across the business landscape in Nevis, one of my goals would be to have an improvement on the membership. Now, you said it right that when there's engagement, there's feedback, there are results. What I can say is that I believe that the membership in the Nevis division is too low to have that sort of meaningful impact. Let me put it this way. Not that the chamber in the Nevis division won't have impact. What I'm saying is that we are in the process of doing surveys, we are doing the process of doing community engagements, because if we don't have a sufficient representation of the various sectors of the businesses, then we don't necessarily get the quality of feedback that impacts the business landscape. So what happens is that when you have a group with a membership which can go to the government, which can go to other stakeholders in the country and lobby on their behalf, but you're not lobbying with the wider view or perspective of the entire landscape. So my call to the Nevis community is that it's very important for the various sectors of business to be a part of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Let me give you an example. If we look at the development of Nevis, let's say within the last 5 years, we can all agree that the water taxi operations are critical to the movement of people it's critical to tourism, it's critical to a number of sectors, employment, all these different things, and they're making a meaningful impact. Currently, as a chamber, we are reaching out to these communities as new sectors, and we are asking them to come on board, be a part of the membership. Now, you would imagine that being a new sector, there will be challenges that they may experience that maybe other businesses, which are different in nature, may not be exposed to, may not be experienced. And this is what the collective effort does. It brings the voices to the table with reason. And so it filters the emotion. And basically it takes, what I would say, it takes the tune to the red tape, and basically, as we say here tonight, talk that gets results. So the chamber is in a position to not only to lobby on behalf of businesses, but basically to find that middle point in that we can partner. I say that because, for example, I would say I'm expecting in the near future to meet with the Nevis Island administration, and that will be an opportunity, and that will be the first opportunity as the chairman for myself and the executive, the council, to basically share with the Nevis Island administration what are some of the concerns and challenges. Now, if it is that we have a number of small businesses, local businesses, who don't see the benefit of collective efforts, don't see the benefits of coming to the round table to talk, to get feedback, to participate in surveys, to become a member, then what happens is that the chamber inadvertently cannot voice all the concerns that are affecting the business in the lay of land. So it's a two-way street. It's a street whereby we are looking for membership, especially in new sectors. We are looking for growth of membership, and the quicker we get that done, it is much easier and for us to be more strategic in how we make our approach to various stakeholders in respect to the interests of businesses here in Nevis.
You know, I'm glad to have you because you've solved for me in about a minute or two something that I've been struggling with for years. And certain things remind me of certain things. And as I'm listening to you there, and I'm saying, oh, so that's how it works. That's how you get your local representatives to change something for you or to address something. When I was growing up, there was a gentleman who used to mimic the Englishmen, because you know that's our background in terms of history, colonialism, and he was well spoken, and so he wanted to tell his brethren that his vehicle had a flat. So he told him, sir, the rotary section of your vehicle, which is usually in constant revolution, has now deflated. So I equate what you just told me to that. So I now understand how people get things done. So you just can't go and tell those representatives you have a problem. You probably have to go and get some representative like the chamber and so on and so forth. So that's how other people get them to go to the house and change things and stuff like that?
Well, I'm not speaking for the representatives as to why they listen. How do you get them to listen?
No,
what I can say,
work
though,
with me. What I'm saying is, I get it, you're not speaking for them.
Right, definitely.
But I just learned something, one way of doing it.
All right.
That's what I'm saying.
So I'll introduce you to an activity that is happening this year. Maybe that this will complement your view.
Okay.
In July the 15th this year, we will be having Dr. Pemberton doing a training session for the business community in Nevis. Now, Dr. Pemberton is an industrial engineer. I don't think that we have any other industrial engineers in the Federation. From my understanding, what an industrial engineer do is that they look at your production lines, they look at waste management. They look at ways in which you can improve efficiency, reduce operation cost. And an industrial engineer, the chamber is bringing Dr. Pemberton here to have a training session, a workshop for one morning. And this is something that we will be reaching out to the community, of course, marketing it, allowing them know that this is an opportunity for them to get technical knowledge, technical support, pointed questions can be asked. And when you come together in such a setting where you have this sort of skill set being brought to the business sector, then that's a knowledge share. So that in itself is an opportunity for the business community to see a direct benefit from being a part of the membership of the chamber, being aligned, networking, getting this sort of resource skill to your business house for virtually a very low cost, if you even count that cost at all.
So you get a bang for the buck.
You get a bang for the buck. You get a bang.
Okay,
big bang,
so
the big bang for the buck.
Right. So you've been doing some stuff,
Yes.
and you got a lot of other stuff to do.
Yes.
That benefit businesses, and you don't. I suppose if you think that you might be too small a business, you'll argue you're not.
No, you're not too small a business, Webbo. I run a company called Hector Associates Limited. I'm just an ordinary person in the community who have been trying at business for some time. I think I can say to you with all certainty that, my journey to be the chairman of the chamber of the Nevis division should be an inspiring story to other small business persons on the island. We accept all memberships. We have different categories of just for profiling purposes, internal administrative purposes. However, I will say to you that every business person, you don't have to own a company. You can be, you can be unincorporated. You could be a sole proprietor. It doesn't matter what your structure of business is. Once you're contributing to the business landscape, that is all that is required, basically, in terms of bringing your business license to the chamber. I'm a business person. I'm conducting business. I have my business license up to date for the current year. You fill out the application form, and it's really that simple. It's not a hard process. So we don't need to think that the chamber is something which is a highfalutin institution. It's not something that serves 30,000 miles above us and we can't reach, connect, touch. This is an institution which we should be able to see, feel, and touch. One of the things I would tell you, Webbo, is that in taking up the leadership of this division, I realize that there is a need for our footprint to be, to be seen more in the community. To be seen more in the community. So we have to be able to connect with people as well, because that's part of the engagement. We have to be able to connect with them for them to be able to connect with us. So that is part of our journey for 2025. What I can say to you, Webbo, is that even though the chamber is in its 76th year of existence in the Federation, in particular the Nevis division will be making 30 years next year. So I think that my leadership into the 30th year next year is important. So it's not only a big number, it's not only a memorable number, but we should be able to have the experience by the business people feeling a part of that 30-year experience. And so I am on this journey of transformation, I'm on this journey of engagement, I'm on this journey to ensure that there's a membership drive to ensure that our members feel connected. I don't think it's just good enough to say, okay, persons should join. We need to reach out to persons who are not members. We need to reach out to persons who were members in the past. And we need to reach out to new persons and say, these are the benefits of you becoming a part of the chamber. This is what we can do, not just for ourselves, but for other businesses that are coming after us. And so we need to pave the way in life so that at least the next generation has a smoother curve. And
you said Nevis division will be 30 years, and 30 years can be considered a lifetime in some instances, right?
Definitely.
Okay.
Well, I would tell you
Yes.
this much. I've had meaningful conversations with past chairpersons. Denrick Liebert, Daniel Atherton, Ernie France, Steve Tyson. You know, these are persons who we can relate to in the community, who have worked with the chamber, who have created, I would say, their legacy. And these are persons who are still involved in businesses up to today. And I believe that from listening to their passion, from listening to their drive, I just want to say thank you for the work that they have done. Thanks for the time that they have taken to share their experiences with me. And I really look forward to, you know, basically making the best of the experience in the next year ahead of us.
Can a person who is not a member of the business, the chamber, when I said a person or an entity, let's use that entity, who is not a member of the chamber, who nonetheless have an issue, can they bring it to the chamber and the chamber address it, or they will be required to be a member in order to have a conversation, an audience with you?
No, Webbo, it's not that. It's not that. Not that much of a tightrope. If you're not a member, we still are interested in hearing from you. One of the roles of chambers generally is to promote advocacy and arbitration as well, to provide those kind of opportunities. This is something I believe that I may have to take up with the Bar Association, for example, and to see how we as a Nevis division can provide better opportunities for that kind of need within the community. What I can say to you as well, Webbo, is that at our chamber we have a conference room. We provide that conference room space for business persons who may just need to use that space for a business meeting. You may need to have a contract signed. You may need to conduct some business on your behalf. We have a conference room at our office, and those are some of the services that we provide to the public, to our members, and to the business community at large.
Okay, so finally,
Yes.
you got the last word.
All right. So I would just like to thank the general public for their support. In April, just last month, we had a mix and mingle in Nevis. I saw a great turnout. I saw, quite a lot of faces. Persons came out to support the chamber at that sort of activity. As we go through this year, we'll be having training sessions. We'll be having other events. Luncheons. We'll have key speakers coming to share knowledge, coming to share their technical skills with us. We'll have training opportunities. But in order for us to be more effective as a chamber, I'm asking for the support of the business community in Nevis. We need to be able to pool our resources. We need to be able to pool our thoughts for meaningful change. Our membership numbers are a bit low. I'm trying to see how best we can reach out for these one-on-one conversations with business houses. No business is too small for you to be recognized by the chamber, and no business is too big. What we actually pride ourselves in terms of representing the business community is to have that diversity, because when you have the inclusion and the diversity, we end up with the best results. That is, we get the best answers. We are able to put the best positions forward if we can have a perspective of the different layers within the business community.
All right. Well, don't be a stranger, because apart from the planned stuff that you have for the next year and all that, there are things that I'm sure that we can discuss.
Of course.
Which the public perhaps will be interested in, and perhaps can advance the society.
Well, I've always admired. I'm no stranger to Van Radio, and I look forward to future opportunities to come and sit with you and tackle some of the hard questions that I think which you have a legacy of.
Right, and the evidence is clear that you've been here before.
I've been here before.
And you haven't been here for a while.
I haven't been here for a while.
So what does that read down to?
Well, maybe what I would say is that maybe I need to bring an application for the chamber to you, Juan, and maybe you need to send an invitation to me.
It's always good to have you.
Thank you very much.
And all the best to the in your current role at the chamber.
Thank you, Webbo.
Stephen Hector, the president of the Nevis chapter of this St. Kitts Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce. The second segment will be back. We'll be back with our second segment right after this.
Ready to save while you build? Now you can at Builders Paradise. Yes, shoppers, build up your Value Club points at Builders Paradise. That's right, Value Club members and shoppers, your favorite frequent buyer club is now available at the home of hardware and more. Whether you're laying tiles, painting walls, replacing doors, upgrading windows, or fixing up your home, every purchase at Builders Paradise now earns you Value Club points. Enjoy exclusive benefits like discounts on thousands of items, special savings for seniors, instant deals, quarterly rebates, plus an extra up to 2% off every quarter. Shop more, save more, earn more, only at Builders Paradise. Don't miss out. Start building your rewards today with Value Club at Builders Paradise, because every bolt, board, and brush brings you closer to bigger, better savings. Terms and conditions apply.
Sugar City St. Kitts. Keep it sweet. Keep listening to Vaughn.
Back on this episode of Thought That Get Results. Our first segment featured the president of the Nevis chapter of the St. Kitts Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Stephen Hector. The second segment, Conrad Nair Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to the listening public, to your hard-working staff here at the Powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean. Good evening. Good evening to my colleague, Mr. Glendale Herbert, and my friends in the international circle. As usual, I say hail up to you and welcome once again to this very informative and educational program. Webbo, it's a pleasure again to be here after a brief absence, and of course I look forward to a healthy discussion this evening. Webbo, thank you.
Glendale Herbert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. It's always a pleasure to be here, as usual. I'm elated to be here. It's a chance for us to reach out to the wider diaspora of Nevisians and Kittitians, I must add. Last weekend actually, we want to say hello and reach out to all of those mothers who would have been celebrated for Mother's Day, the Herculean job they've done for us, or yourself, myself, Naya. I don't think our mother is still around, but of course, we are products of good upbringing. And I'd like to say, kudos to mothers, and we give you our support here from Vaughn Radio. Where in addition to that, we have a new pope that's been installed at the Vatican. Pope Leo, a U.S. citizen, first time ever in the history of the United States and the Papal See. Now, what's important to that, the implications of that, should be something to look at in terms of, Catholicism was a big struggle in the United States. In the 1960s and 70s, John F. Kennedy was the biggest stumbling block to John F. Kennedy becoming president that stood in his way. They occupy a space of about 60 million people in the United States, maybe a little more than that, and that's a significant block of people. And I'm sure they will be looking to grow, the population of Catholics in the United States. Of course, in addition to that, China, it was announced that China and the U.S. just signed an agreement, a 90-day agreement, where they will begin discussions as to tariffs. The biggest effects in history right now that affect markets and that has sent tremors down to, along people who are in trading. Not just commodities in terms of sale of goods, etc., but also it affects markets like the stock markets and all the bond markets, all the equity markets. So that is significant. The markets seem to have settled down with that news. China has agreed to cut its tariffs from 125 proposed down to 10, whereas the United States from 145 to 30%. That is significant. In addition, and like I said, there are a lot of opportunities here. I don't know if we speak towards the opportunity. We just came off the heels of the Chamber of Commerce interview, and that is important here in the homeland as to how we can get business moving forward, and what is their role and what has been their role as in terms of their effectiveness. Because business is an important cornerstone or cog in our wheel in terms of moving forward in this country.
Before we get to maybe anything new on the table, right? You may have had an opportunity to hear the first segment.
Yes.
I find some very intriguing things came out, and I wanted to see whether or not you gentlemen had anything to add in regard to that.
Well, I must say, Webbo, first let me congratulate Mr. Hector for becoming the president of the Nevis end of the Chamber of Commerce. Seems like it's a new position for him, and he's got some enthusiasm going forward dealing with it. I do hope we can feel the pulse of the Chamber a little more in Nevis, because I've been in business for a while, and somehow we have not been hearing much, or maybe I probably have not put myself in a position to hear much and to engage with them. But it sounds like he's bubbling up and exhibiting, his position as one that would be of great interest and help to business. Networking, advocacy, collecting data and continuity and such words. I for one sometimes like to have a more simpler approach and more simpler understanding of the effectiveness of these organizations. I'm not sure if he did explain how one can become a member, but I thought probably I have missed that, and in terms of what kind of dues you may have to pay monthly and so forth, maybe I have missed that. But apart from that, I do hope that we as business people, however small, can really feel the pulse of the chamber, and really to see it really in its full function, impacting on government policies, I suppose, and making it easier, because it's quite theoretical listening to the president, I think, because in reality, I mean, they're talking about footprints and so forth going forward, and it makes me wonder, because I am sorry that he didn't stay around for a bit, because I'm not sure how much we here in Nevis really try to clear the path for someone who is even probably threatening us on the business front. And it seems to me like that's what he's saying, making it easier. And if you're in a business for 15 years, a business of 5 years should not be experiencing the same situation. But in reality, I think those who are in business for 15 years well want you to have a difficult time, especially when you're in the same line of business. So I think it's I really wanted to ask him one or two questions, even about his personal business. If someone is attempting to do the same business that you're in, how do you make it easier for such individual? Because I think in reality, here on Ireland, I don't find we seek to do that. Sometimes you don't want to give no business idea to no big businessman, because sometimes they just tend to tell you something that frustrates you, that makes you want to give up on your attempt to get into that line of business. And of course, if they can be of great help, every businessman would appreciate that. If they can be impacting on government policies, because I do think sometimes government can make it a little easier for young entrepreneurs and to really nourish those attempts and efforts that I see people are trying to make here in Nevis, and sometimes they are basically pushed out of the way. And so, in effect, I think there's a role to be played, but it comes down to the personalities, and it comes down to the willingness for us to really come together as a united front of business people, regardless how threatening his business might be to my business and her business might be to the other person's business, and really make it an easier environment to function in. That to me is a distant thunder, as it has been in my experience. No one wants to really make it that easy, especially if you're in the same line of business with them. What do you think, Mr. Dan?
Well, Webbo, frankly, the Chamber, he said that the Chamber has been around for about 30 years. Here at Nevis, it's a subdivision of the Chamber in St. Kitts. Now, I'm hard pressed to who have ever felt the field of Chamber, as a person in the business sector here on Nevis. And I think most people in Nevis has not felt their presence. Now, in St. Kitts might be a different matter, but you've been around for 30 years and nobody really knows anything about the Chamber. Mm-hmm. That's a problem, and I think that's a historic thing as it relates to Nevisians. Nevisians were never a people historically that had unions, like in St. Kitts, trade unions. People are petitioning on their behalf. Nevisians are people who kind of pull up your bootstraps kind of sort of people and just move forward and keep their head down. I think it's a cultural thing, maybe. It may for the reason why it hasn't got hold any on Nevis or the Nevisian psyche, business psyche that is. And I think they have a Herculean task in Nevis in terms of getting Nevisians excited. It's just the culture is just different. The business culture is different here. So in St. Kitts it might work. And again, maybe it's another thing, it's a subgroup, so I don't know how that works. It doesn't seem to be a thing that people in the business sector. And I deal with the people in the business sector for the last maybe 30 years, going back as far as 1994 in this country, day in, day out. So I don't know.
But if something exists, we tend to believe that it's working, and sometimes there is some benefits going somewhere, and so that front is always presented. But questions like what particular changes they are working on at this point in time, or they have been working on, would have been of interest to me, because what we have here sometimes is people sometimes speaks very well about things, and but in reality, you don't feel them, and that's what you have said, Mr. Glendale. After 30 years, I was surprised. 30 years is a long time, and and how much they can, because I think there's a role to play, if they are genuine to their task, in a sense. And because sometimes I feel like the small business people, sometimes there seems like nuisance sometimes to me, the vendors over here in Nevis seem to be like nuisance to the government, because they keep running them up and down the place. You can't go down on the Penny's Beach, because one man take over the whole beach. In town they give them 2 days. Now they had a few vendors in town. Now me only see one vendor in town. I don't know, they expect people can just simply survive after 2 days. Vending is just like welding, it's just like practicing law. It's an occupation, and I think they need to be more sensitive about such occupation, because the biggest man you ever see was once a baby, and you look at the transformation of Penny's Beach, and how many big businesses are there today. And one can say it started by Sunshine, one, with a cooler and a barbecue that I made for him in the first instance. And so we must be sensitive. We must give them a chance, give them an opportunity. And I keep saying, to me, the vendors seems like a nuisance to this government, because even at the Mundo chat, there are rules and regulations and things, and so it's easier to be frustrated than to be inspired to go and do what you have to do and make a living, And so I would happy to know that the chamber can impact and clear the way and make it an easier task for those who seems to involve in these small business, but have great potential to expand and diversify. I mean, most importantly, they put the bread on the table, and sometimes I suppose if such organization like the chamber can be functional and effectively functional, I suppose we can have maybe less people going out to want to work for government, and come with that would be an expansion of the economy, but I'm not sure if that's the direction people want to go in terms of those in central authority. Sometimes you wonder, it looks like they want everybody to work for the government, and so they can control everybody. But I would like to see more sensitivity being applied to the very small business, especially I'm speaking on behalf of the vendors, because you move around a little bit and you see how people function, how people want to exchange their little things for money. And sometimes, a marketplace is where goods and services are exchanged. I'm not saying, the idea that Charlestown is too busy and people can't find place to walk is a myth. And so that, to me, need to be rethink and allow more exchange to be taking place in Charlestown, and not just Charlestown. I do have a major problem. I got friends who want to do things on Penny's Beach, but there's no space, and there's just no space. One man got out of the whole beach, and I'll always talk about that, because it's the opportunity. We're talking about equal opportunity. Must be had by each and every one, and sometimes, yes, the place can get full with businesses, but there's that capacity for more businesses, and let's not frustrate the very simple individuals, very small initiatives that we see wants to surface, and sometimes you probably don't even see them. They are frustrated within their own self and just can't find that outlet, can't find that individual to talk to, because I've mentioned this and they said they would look into it, and tourist seasons have come and gone, things remain the same. My friends still want to have a little massage place on the beach, and another friend still want to have a little something going on, but we got to just be more sensitive. And in all what the president of the Nevis branch of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce have just said, I do hope they can be effective and, you know, provide a easier pathway to the development and of small businesses in some way or the other.
The thing, you see, Naya, well, there are two things I was really interested in that discussion. One that you just mentioned with the development of small business. Of course, small business perhaps can, you know, join and see how can put the resources together and stuff like that. But the other thing was, like we have spoke oftentimes here, about the pooling of resources to form other amalgamations and so on for the benefit of the whole country. But you see, we still have this stigma or something and this fear of taking the chances, because, for instance, sometimes, as you gentlemen would know, you as businessmen, you decide you see a need and you decide, let me take the risk. And there's a correspondent comrade who, while you're taking the chance, is putting out an equal amount of energy to make sure you fail. However, that is life.
Yeah.
And one must face the challenges and have courage. So it's not going to be just as easy as having a meeting and writing down, you know, some goals and objectives and stuff like that. But it's to do the work. And I always want to pay homage to the Nevis Credit Union and those other entities that started. TDC was one of them, over 50 years now, and, you know, able to last and serve the public well.
Yeah, when the chamber seems to me to be an advocacy group on the behalf of businesses, and people, of course, would have to register in businesses and pay a fee, I think, a subscription fee, because that's how they're able to thrive, generally speaking. And if that is the case, even though that didn't come out in the discussion whether or not businesses has to pay a subscription, I suppose that's part of it. If I know how these things work. Again, I think we're a different society historically, and I think, and I don't know, Webbo, if you experience what it has been in terms of feeling the chamber, the advocacy on the behalf of businesses and here on Nevis. It was, to me, it has been, like I say, I don't want to repeat myself on that, but it seems to me that there have been a miss, and not within playing amongst the business leaders or the mindset.
Glendale, let me just take this.
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening. I'm wondering if the chamber can indeed look after the interests of the range of business people. Okay. In the past, I think there's a tendency to really look after the interests of, in our terms, big business. But we know we have the range going right down to the entrepreneurs, the small business, spin-offs into like contractors and even the people with the selling with the tray. Okay, and I'm not so sure that those interests coincide, and so I'm wondering if we can have a diverse number of business groups, right, to look after the interests of say whatever, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 for that matter, groups of people whose because I think the interests would be better looked after with in an arrangement like that.
Caller, I don't speak on behalf of any of the chambers, but what I glean from my own knowledge and what the president of the Nevis Chamber had just indicated, he said that there was room for all. For instance, they have segments where, based on your capital outlay or whatever, you can be considered a big business or huge, then big, then medium, then small, down to the shop or something like that. And so if you, my understanding is, if you, for instance, are a member, then you have a voice in whatever particular range. That makes sense in terms of your query?
It makes sense up to a point. What the reality on the ground and the history doesn't really show that to be the case.
Is it because the history? Is it because the smaller businesses maybe hold a view that the bigger businesses won't look out for them, or they wouldn't get a fair share? Can that be a hindrance?
That can definitely be a hindrance, because I mean, just take something as simple as vending on the sidewalk. We know that the bigger businesses dislike the practice, especially since they feel that they pay a disproportionate amount in taxes as compared to the guy on the street, right? The overheads are high and so on, right? So I mean, that's asking for internal clashes in the organization. That's why I say maybe it's better if it's separated. Right?
So you're proffering then that the smaller businesses, such as that category, not necessarily be members of the core, but have a representation or organization for themselves.
Right, because the bigger business, as we know, their clout, I think, comes from the fact that they can contribute to, whether it's political campaigns or whatever.
So let me ask you this then, caller. Yeah. You are aware or would agree that a lot of these mega businesses were once small?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, okay, so...
Right.
So
wait, not a lot. I mean, I wouldn't say a lot.
Okay.
But
some of them, mega businesses, were once small. So you're putting forth the argument that once they get big, they forget how it is to be small?
But by their very nature, they probably would, because the interests are different. But remember too, that the small business, even though they may not be weighty in terms of the turnovers and so on, and can contribute to the powers that be, who make the environment for them to operate in. They, in terms of numbers of votes, I think that at least compensates for it, for their small size.
Maybe numbers of votes.
Well, usually any vendor on the street probably have family and so on that they can influence.
You know, that always fascinates me, right? Because the poor people like to classify us, we like to classify ourselves as poor and oppressed. And you just made a point that numbers is what counts.
Yep.
When it comes to the distribution of power.
Yep,
but then when it comes to the time for the distribution, the poor and oppressed seem to go for the oppressor, no?
No, I wouldn't quite really.
Well then, how the oppressors get the numbers?
The oppressors, because
the so-called oppressors,
because of their financial clout, they can contribute more.
No, I think you remind me of Edgewood now. You have disconnected me.
What I'm saying is, right, you have a big business, right, making millions of dollars, they can contribute thousands and hundreds, maybe even hundreds of thousands to the power brokers in society, which are really our elected officials, right? But really and truly, I mean, those big businesses are run by, whether it's a family or a board or something like that. That's where the influence on the voting actually stops.
I was going to disagree with, I was going to make a point, but I see Glendale is shaking his head. Glendale, go ahead.
No, caller, you still there?
Yes.
No, I think you didn't catch on to where Webb was going when he mentioned that the small man, he basically was saying the small man has the same amount of votes as the big man, meaning in business. And let's say the turn hand or the vendor on the street, and the vendor has family, and each person has the same currency as the guy who runs the big mega shop or the big mega business. They have their currency is equal as it relates.
But there's a multiplier effect on let's say huckster. That's what I was getting at. There's a multiplier effect compared to, let's say, a family-owned business. Okay, the family-owned big business, their clout comes from their financial, the fact that they have a huge financial outlay. The smaller guy on the street, his clout comes from primarily from the fact that they're usually a family unit, and not only that, they are in closer contact with the everyday person on the street. And so, in that sense, that compensates, I think, for the influence of big business. Big business usually influences in between election time more than anything else. Again, because of their financial clout.
So,
okay, but there was something that somebody said about Charlestown being. Not being overrun with vendors. I think that basically that's what they were saying. Is it to say though that there shouldn't be standards? I agree that if you don't have vending on the streets and so on, the place looks very sterile. Okay, and that's not, you don't really want that. It upsets the brand. Of the town itself. But at the same time, do you really want, the running on and off the sidewalk, running into traffic, going into traffic, and chaos? You don't really want that. So there should be, I think, a happy medium. And the other thing is, where I know there's a discussion down here. I'm not so sure if it applies to Nevis as well, where the Bureau of Standards is saying that you must have all of what you're selling labeled. Well, I guess it applies to food stuff and confectionery, and I guess the person with the tray as well, right? And is that a particularly an onerous task for these very small businesses, right? And again, I agree there should be standards. You want contact tracing, especially if you're selling food. You want to be able to identify where some outbreak might have been initiated. But at the same time, you don't want to overburden these small people with what we know are best practices. And so the government really, I think, should facilitate, if they're going to be making those kinds of regulation, they should really facilitate the small person with their labeling and so on, whether produce the labels or for them or something, rather than just make hit them with this onerous new regulation.
Okay.
That would increase prices as well. Yeah.
All right.
All
Okay.
right.
Right. Yes.
but Webbo, I think the question on the table is, how does a chamber encourages the small man? As you said rightly, the big businesses want small too. And how do you encourage them to become big rather than, stifle their growth? In my mind, from what I've gleaned, the chamber generally, services the big businesses. Because like the gentleman says, of course, between the elections, they're the ones who have the money. And that's a 5-year span. And how do you, what happens to the small little, turn hana, the small little, vendor or what have you? How do you encourage them? How do you bring them along? Like Naya said, chase them off the street. That's not encouraging. We have to figure out a fine medium where, those folks can be brought along. We don't know the eventual potential of these people and what they will become. No.
Well, the gentleman, I think the president made a point by saying that the Nevis Chamber is multidisciplined, and I think he was speaking to the fact that here in Nevis, the chamber is made up of people that come from a wide, varied background of business, as opposed to Sinkis. That's what he said. I think that's a good starting point. I think that can maybe, solve or come together with the suggestion that the caller have just made when he said that small business should have their own group and the bigger business should have their own group. Because in this multi-disciplined, you would find such categories, I suppose. But to me, it's just effectiveness, because talk is cheap, you see me, and I sometimes get frustrated.
But let's query the question. Let's be realistic. Okay, you have multi-groups, but who dominates in the multi-group? The alpha. You understand? That meaning the big businesses are going to dominate in terms of carry the day, in terms of what the advocacy is, as it relates to if you're petitioning government or what have you. I mean, the small little groups of voices or the vendor class or what have you would never have the leverage as the big box, businesses.
I suppose
within the chamber during that period, that 5-year period between elections. I meant. So
I suppose you're
it's
right.
It's a fantasy.
But in the smaller businesses, you might have a lot more smaller businesses than the big business. And I think the caller made a point, you have just alluded to it, that yes, in between elections and all that kind of stuff. But I think in terms of numbers, the small business, they would be more in numbers. And I suppose money counts, I believe, and so the caller is making some kind of inroads when he speaks to the fact that in between the 5 years and then come the 5 years. So
there you go.
It's basically a kind of a mindset and a tendency and a way in which I suppose the government thinks and run their show, because the government, again, the big businesses might employ a lot more people.
That's it.
Than the small business are able to do. And so that would be in the interest of the government. They listen to them more.
There you go. It's easy to speak in platitudes, but you need the manpower also. Mm-hmm. You have to manage that kind of, all these little groups that you're talking about, you're going to have in a small chamber. So, I mean, it's a good idealistically, sounds good. But again, practically in terms of, playing out in the marketplace is a different story. Yeah, so Webbo, one of the things I thought of is I wanted to, some ideas came across the table, and I was speaking to a gentleman over the last couple of days, and he has an idea, a fascinating idea which I never thought of, and he's trying to get a business done in Nevis. And it shows, I just want to put it out there because it's opportunity for people who wouldn't think of this. And the baby boomers are retiring at an alarming number of about 10,000 per day in the United States. That's their number. 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day in the United States. And it is the wealthiest group of people on the face of the planet. Their 401k is about $450,000 at a minimum. And they're thinking about, it's a great opportunity for people who want to go into geriatric care and, that sort of thing, because there's money in it. And that is where, and I never thought of it until it hit me and said, boy, it's a big deal, because these people need to, do things with their money, and they need to go. And he wants to develop a retirement, luxury retirement place here on Nevis. Just only maybe around 25, 30 people. 25 persons they would house. And it was a fascinating idea. So I put out there, because that idea, there's enough out there for enough people to, to get into business in different areas in that area, and making money out of it. It's a big deal, because the kind of monies these people would pay, especially the wealthier ones, meaning the luxury ones, it'll spin your head around, even if you can get 25 out of the United States to come here. So I just wanted to throw that out there for people looking for, thinking of things. The geriatric care, 10,000 a day. That's a number. That's a big number. Baby boomers. So that I found that to be rather interesting. I don't know what you think.
Break it down some more for the everyday public.
We used to tell him now, break it down some more for me too.
Define baby boomers.
I can't go. The baby boomers people I think was born from 1956. I think the year was all the way through 1980. I remember what it is. 1950. The baby boomer. I'm not sure. I think it's 1980. There's a block of people. The most people that was born, they say in that block of time. Yeah, and they all come into retirement now, and it's even creating problems with the Social Security scheme, not only in the United States, here in St. Kitts Nevis also.
And you're saying they would like to come on shore?
Yes.
And live.
Right, because a lot of baby boomers, yes.
And so a key sector can
correct,
develop.
and they're trying to develop, they're prospecting on properties now, and trying to get the properties going into, trying to, close the deal on a property, and it's going to be that is a big deal. That to me was good. So anyone, start thinking, not just, there are two different type of tourism. With geriatric, people don't think of that. Of course, they will have their special geriatrics doctor trained on staff, and the whole 9 nurses, whatever the case is, and staff. And when they ran the numbers to me, it was like, whoa, in terms of what the earnings are monthly versus the gross earnings are monthly versus what the profit line look like. So it was a very interesting concept.
Okay,
but the thing is now is to how to capture the people to come. And even here, because here in St. Kitts Nevis also, like I said, our Social Security scheme is under pressure right now. All for Social Security, because of baby boomers, most people are working in society. Baby boomers. But then we have a problem around the world where people are not having enough children. And all countries, Germany, Britain, is a big, Japan, China even having that problem. You remember when China could have had many kids, and they went down to one child, I think, per family. And now they're running into this thing where they need, Germany just took in 600,000 people 5 years ago. Those both people from Africa, because they took them in and settled them in Germany and tried to have them cultured German Africans, because they need people to run their industry. You don't have enough people to run your industry. Your country will fall behind. So, even St. Kitts Nevis, like I said, our baby boomers are retiring, and they're retiring rather well off, in the sense that we don't have 401ks, but their packages are decent. So, elderly care, it was just fascinating to me.
Okay. Well, yes, you're talking big business too.
Yeah. Yes.
Big business.
Another thing, that's something I think we should look into. The real estate market in Nevis, I don't know how close any one of us been looking closely, but most of the sales in real estate, especially mid-range to high-end, are not done by Nevisians. That's just a fact.
Let me get this. Yeah. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening. I'm here listening to this story. I'm wondering how the healthcare system that we have around here.
You're wondering, maybe you want to turn your radio down, Kez, and listen to the phone. Listen to the phone. You will hear us, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so what's your question?
Now, I was wondering about the thing that the guy is talking about with the baby boomers. But I'm just wondering how that would work with the healthcare system that we have around here.
I think that is one of the big concerns that, I mean, the people who question this, but they're saying that they're bringing in their own doctors being trained. So in Cuba, they have, and geriatric physicians. Pharmacy would be in place there on site. All this sort of thing would be on site. But then again, you still have critical care, which is absent in our hospital setting. So these are things that for them to think through. But it's a great question, to be frank with you, and that's one of the questions I asked them. But they're sort of gaming for this by having their physicians and being trained coming out of Cuba, from what I get. What they said to me.
I'm just here listening and just was wondering, I mean, how, this thing don't work around here.
Yeah. But it's a big money. It's a big money. And it diverse a tourism market.
And it's good for dreaming, right?
And it's good for dreaming as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but.
Well, that's interesting because Glenn, just recently I was in another jurisdiction.
Oh yes.
And big institution, huge institution, and they cater for kids or people who are in some way special, with some kind of retardation, and they are American kids.
Fascinating.
Sent down to the Caribbean, because I was in another Caribbean island.
Recently?
Yes, and it's a massive institution, massive building, massive compound.
Yeah.
Yes. And they are engaged in a lot of agriculture work too.
Yes.
And it provides huge employment for the people that live in close proximity.
Naya, I'll come back to you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes. With regards that suggestion, yes, the health facilities would be important to people like that, but also even things like having an airport that can accommodate like the air ambulances and so on. Those kinds of ancillary facilities are necessary for something like that as well, right? And it does not have to be, I think, big business. What can possibly happen is that we train people in geriatric care and license them according to, let's say, North American, if that's the market that we want, North American standard, and then advertise that and do a one-to-one relationship between the people coming down. So it doesn't have to be a big facility or, that would accommodate a number of people. But it could be, bigger than a cottage industry, but certainly that's something that people can get into. I think it's a really, really good idea.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, go on.
Yeah, if you will. I mean, just to ferry out a bit of deeper information on it. When they told me, for example, listen, I said, well, what kind of monthlies you will charge for 25 people? He said, $8,000 to $10,000 a month, US, that is, okay? US, that is. But you're talking about high luxury. And that makes sense when you start running the numbers, and then when you start backing your numbers into your operational costs, which when we finished with him, he said he was up to $103,000. He would take bringing in, this is $200,000 a month operation. So you see the room, the spread. But again, and I'm wishing him well, because he's trying to close on a major piece of property here in Nevis for them to do it. So that's going to be quite interesting in terms of changing the psyche of how we approach tourism and the type of tourism we're talking about. And this is a private business person. You know, so I like you know, this is good. It's good stuff to me.
But it sounds good because I can see, some obviously some transformation must take place. Not just training for the people, but the other facilities that come with it.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's why I think it's as the caller saying, it doesn't really have to be big business, but I mean, I see a lot of spin-off, which government may have to play a major role in terms of preparedness of the general environment for such things to function.
Absolutely.
Because the businessman not going to put down a airstrip that the ambulance can come, you know, and so forth. And but I was talking about that institution that that I visited in Jamaica. Yes, I didn't visit the institution. I went in the area and examined the massive compound, and I've spoken to people who work there. You know, and people who work there are some enjoying it, and some say that it's quite challenging because the people are not too mentally stable. You know, and they can, you know, they can be very aggressive at times. But important to me that they are doing agriculture and a major compound, you know, with a lot of food being planted and so forth. You know. And so it tends to fit in a little bit to what you're talking about. You know, you're probably talking about care for the elderly, but these are younger people who minds are not to develop, you know, and some form of retardation, you know. I mean, we are just really filtering into the various aspects of tourism here. The Chamber of Commerce should be listening.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, and why this might be quite viable, much like what in the jurisdiction you went to, is because in the States, for example, folks when they retire, they head to south to Florida for the most part. As I said, they head to the warmer areas. The warmer areas, we have 365 days per year warm temperature, and of course the air is clean, and you know you're living in a tropic, and it can be attractive, and we're noted, or at least known to be a high-end destination. You know, that's how we look at ourselves. Historically, we've always been that way, and you know, it's something that might just very well work with the right, you know. But again, I was talking about the real estate industry, and I was saying to you, I go back to that again quickly, if you allow me. Most of the high-end properties and mid-range to high-end properties on Nevis are being sold not by Nevisians. Most of their properties, period, are not being sold by Nevisians.
Who owns
and
properties?
Most of them have been sold by expats, to new expats. And that is interesting and important. Now, I often wonder, do they have alien landholding license? And you know, not only in land, what's the thing there where you can work permits? Sorry, work permits. They have a landholding license, work permits for the most part, because you're doing real estate, and really your hand don't really have to be shown until you do a closing. You know, and you come to the table, or you have a proxy who goes to the table on your behalf to close. You get an attorney to close, and you sell a property for $1 million. You know, 6%. Of $1 million, you know what that ferries out to be, you know. That's a $60,000. Is that correct? Yeah, $60,000 fee, US. So, and you know, are they again? You got to ask the question: when you collect a fee like that, how is that handled? Again, a lot of our locals are not in that market, or playing in that market. It's a big market, and I think, you know, I don't know, but it's a bit, you know, interesting to me and something to look at.
Yeah, well, yes,
because there's leakage, and the idea behind my entire comment is that, as a government, you seek not to have leakage in your revenue collection. And you know, I don't know the folks, if they are that astute, or if they are looking at it where they seepage, leakage rather.
Well, you know, just yesterday, I think I overheard the Premier speak to the fact that there was over $70-80 million worth of real estate being
transacted.
Indeed,
That's the point I'm making.
So that's you know, thinking about what you're saying.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
That's the point.
That's a lot of money. But how much? I mean, and that's what's happening. It's been happening for a long time. Where expats have been selling things.
And you see, you don't have any,
whether or not
you don't have any guidelines.
They have work permits.
You don't have any guidelines because in the real estate industry, I mean, you know, you don't have a licensing body here where they're like you have to go to your license. So there's control, some sort of control. This is big business. It's not, you know, penny any business. And you don't have, like I said, you don't have any controls. You don't have any, you know, to protect the integrity of the jurisdiction. You understand? The reputation of the jurisdiction. I mean, you must have some controls. You must have a body that manages or license people, particularly when you start going down this road. And I think it's high time because there's a lot of leakage again in your revenue base.
We tell you they don't have a body that controls and do such things.
No, I'm certainly not. There's none. I'm certain as the sun, as the moon. Is there a moon upstairs?
There's quite a possibility for great leakages.
I mean, leakage in terms of your collection. One of the things you're trying not to, you seek to not to do is to have leakages in your collection in terms of your tax, your revenue, in terms of your revenues. You know, everybody must pay their fair share. No? That's just the way, you know, I think. And there's a country to run, of course, and there's a lot of services that has to be upkept, or kept up rather, and from sanitation all the way to healthcare, on and on and on. And you know, this ought to be something that, you know, we ought to be looking at. Like I said, I don't think any locals are not in this game in any real way. You have one or two guys, but they're not in the game, in what I'm talking about, the real game. You know, in terms of transaction of the real, you know, high-end properties that are located in the so-called high-end areas. You know, and we know where they are.
Well, the increase in revenue collected according to the last budget is somewhere up 5+6%. You're saying that is probably further squeezing of the local and not tapping into or preventing such leakages that may be taking place.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Hello, good evening. Webbo.
Yes.
I have a little problem. You know the picture with Vance Armory at Nanton Corner?
Yeah, you want to listen to your phone though, because you're having a delay, you know.
Sorry. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
You know there is a picture with Vance Armory at Malcolm Corner, Nanton Corner?
If I know the picture?
Yeah, with Vance Armory that dropped down on the ground.
I can't say. I know there was a picture there. So
yeah, when it dropped on the ground, so I would like you to go back up to our call and radio that if anybody who knows about it to put it back up, please.
Okay, but I could ask you a question? You wouldn't like to put it back up?
Well, I don't have the material to put it back up.
But somebody
else... So I'm looking for the government to put it back up.
Work with me.
Oh, sorry.
So you think somebody else may have the material?
I know the government have material, so...
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to put it on the radio. I would love to see it back up, you know. It was a beautiful sight.
Okay, I got you.
So if you know the ways... I thought Mr. Brown was on the program tonight, so I would have asked him because he's in the government.
No, he's listening. He's listening.
So...
He's listening, so make your point.
So you could please put it back up for me before Culturama, that when everybody comes for Culturama to see the good premiere there again, please. That's my question.
Okay. All right. I got you.
All right.
Have a good evening.
One more little point, Webbo. A little tip for people who have knowledge. I would like you, Naya, Mr. Herbert, to give me a glimpse on it. Let your eyes take and your hands see. Thank you.
Okay.
Let your eyes take and your hands see. You could give me a result, please?
Naya. He said Naya.
Let my eyes take and my hands see. That's a little too difficult for me at this point. I can tell you that straight up. I can't put that in any perspective that would make any sense immediately. I'm sorry, it could be something that people say, but I never heard that, and I cannot make sense of it.
You never heard it, and you see it with your eyes and you have it in your hand? And you never heard it, you hear it and you never heard it before? Simple words like that, you can give an explanation.
Well, can you help me then? Help me then.
The explanation. The explanation is, if your hand see, it can't take, but if your eye see, it could take, your hand take it. When your eye see it, your hand can take it, but if your eyes see, your hand can take it, but if your eyes You hear, Webbo?
I'm listening.
Your hand see and your eyes see. So I reform it now. Let your hand take and your eyes see.
I'm disconnected. Can you help me, please?
No, he's gone already. He's disconnected already.
No, can you help me, Mr. Herbert?
I just think he's just saying, you know, what you see, you know, you leave people things alone. That's basically what he's saying. That's basically what I get from it.
You agree with him?
I wasn't agreeing or disagreeing. Just, whatever, you know, that's his philosophy.
But you just explained it.
I think that's what he's saying.
Okay.
He's attempting to get across.
Right. So what I was asking you is if what you explained, are you in agreement with it?
For the most part, yes.
So for the most part,
yeah, leave people things alone.
But for other parts, you must go with it.
You must don't.
Leave people things alone. I like that part, Webbo.
Leave
people things alone.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just leave it there.
So what if it's yours?
Leave people things alone.
Yeah, but the question I ask you is, what if it is yours?
I want him to leave it.
Being a person.
Okay, so what else? What else we got?
Glendale, you mentioned the Pope and Pope Leo the 14th. They have now taken the stage of the leader of the billions of Catholic across the globe, and massive news coverage and everything else. But I was asking who is his wife? You know, who is his mother or even sister? No mention too much of his siblings or where he came from, other than he's from America. And to me, the Catholic Church need to have more of a feminine or a female, or show more adherence to the existence of the woman. You know, he's now taken the stage and the head of a Catholic organization that have not had a good reputation as it relates to well, the fact that they don't have wife, I suppose. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they doesn't allow women to be a part of the church. And so to me, it is something that's starting off. It started a long time ago, and it's continued to be something that it's not too well accepted in today's world, really. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if it's not too well accepted in today's world. They got 1.4 billion Catholics. So, you know, I mean, that seemed to be a hefty number, no? And so in terms of acceptance. No, you know, I mean, you know, they're the so-called architects of of Western Christianity. The church, the Catholic Church, they are the ones that every church in the Western world, from Methodist to Anglican to everybody else, starts from, and that's the root. Yeah. Some of them goes in different direction, even Pentecostal and all that. But in terms of Christian doctrinaire, Western, that is, not Eastern, because of course the Ethiopian Coptic Church, Orthodox Church, would have been older, and of course, you know, they hold a different position on a number of things. Both churches, the Catholic Church started slightly after the Coptic, the Ethiopian Church. The Catholic would have been around 300, they're about 380 there, and then, you know, you would have pretty much said, well, with Constantinople.
Because obviously, it would great force. It would great force and great what could I say? At times, illegality that they can enforce that doctrine, which to me it's questionable in a sense that they have 1-point-something billion people following into that. I mean, to go back in history, we know about the Reformation. Right. And the Counter-Reformation, and that points to a very dark age of Catholicism and the establishment and growth of the papacy, you know. And so one wonders, in today's world where we see the Muslims and such people seems to be notorious for their fundamentalism, you know, I think the Catholics been through that period, and but it's quite unknown to many. It's not wrong to say that the Catholics have killed more people than the Muslims. Without a doubt. And but yet they still remain, and you know, I think they have about 14% of their following in Africa, and up to date we cannot see a black pope.
Well, they had 3 before, yeah.
They had 3 black popes.
Yeah, they had 3 in history. One in around 189, the other one was around the 300s, and you know, somewhere around there. They had 3. From North Africa. Well, really, North Africa pretty much was the center of the world at that point. You know what I mean? Because I've often said to people, a lot of people don't know this, Africa extended into Yemen, Oman, Saudi Arabia, all that, until that only changed in 1869 when they built the Suez Canal, when they completed it. Egypt and Palestine is connected. The Suez Canal is what break it. So it goes all the way up. All of that is Africa. But you see, today people in contemporary times don't know that. That's 150 years ago. And then the idea of the word Middle East is an invention that came around after 1869 that created the Middle East, the word, to separate. But Africa goes all the way up into Oman, Jordan, Palestine, today's Israel. That's all Africa. The ordinary guy don't know these things. When they bust the Suez, the French decided to bust the Suez Canal and break so that ships can go east, west, whatever. That is when they made the separation. So, I mean, well, the civilization started in Africa because it's all there. In that region, you know, as you know very well, that, what's her name, Queen of Sheba was in Ethiopia in 900 BC, 1000 BC, which is 4,000. Solomon was in the same region, in Ethiopia, in the Aksum Kingdom. That used to be called the Aksum Kingdom at that point, which is one of the great kingdoms, that and Kemet, which you know in Egypt, and the other one is the Kush, which is Sudan. You know, so those are the big kingdoms. But people, you know, people don't read and people don't really, you know, at the point, you know, these things are a lot of these phenomena just took place 100, 150, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Even Israel, you know, we know Israel, the formation of Israel. I mean, people think Israel goes back thousands of years. That's not the case. Jacob is Israel. It wasn't called Israel. It's just a name, but the country Israel was not there. It was created in that time. You understand? Because the Jews inhabit there. Remember, some of the oldest Jews are Falashas, which are Ethiopian. You know, Jews in the world. So, I mean, when you don't know your history and you don't know, you know who you are, it portends a lot of, ambiguities and self-hate. you don't even know yourself. You know what I mean? Yeah, but this is real.
Any positive coming from the fact that he's American by birth?
Boy, the thing, the positive going to be, I believe, and I said it to a friend of mine when they named him, because he wasn't even in the mix when they were thinking about Pope. I think it's going to have an effect in America, of course, in the United States, and a lot of policy, because, of course, it's an American Pope, and when he speaks, the Americans are going to, they're proud. So, I mean, a lot of policy, like foreign policy or stuff like that, the Vatican have a say. At the end of the day, they control 1.4 billion people. That's significant. So it is going to be played out important in the United States. I mean, it's a big deal. It's like when Obama became president, a first of. Imagine that, a first of Catholic amongst. Think of all the permutations that carries, and all the in the United States. That's a big deal.
We also know that that President Trump have lifted sanction of Syria. Yes,
that's interesting.
Yes, they have. It's quite a recent thing.
Yeah.
He's somewhere in the Middle East now.
Yeah.
And he said it's their time to shine. And so, what do you think about that?
Well, I guess the proxy war is over between them and Russia for Syria, and they now want to descend down, and Syria now, and it's all about investments.
Let me take this, Glendale. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hey, good night.
Yes, go ahead, Glendale.
Yeah, I guess the proxy war is over, between Syria, between Russia and them. And they're now ready to go into Syria and invest them. He's there, the Saudis and the Qatarians. And that is a big deal. Syria is a very interesting place. It's a beautiful place in terms of on the sea. Syria, that is going to be interesting. It's at the end of the day, it's all about, these things go, taking a chance.
So you don't think it's America orientated, but Donald Trump orientated in his eager character.
No, man, Donald Trump is just a transactional man. It's a deal. Everything is a deal. It's no emotions in this. It's just deals. Deals where we can make money and furtherance of Americana around the world. That's what Donald Trump is about. Making deals, making money, and the furtherance of the Americans' interests. That's why you hear the Panama Canal, they take it back. That's why they say, the Gulf of America. We want Greenland. But that's been proffered from 1952 by Truman. They wanted Greenland since 1952. And every time they pull back. It's about America and the so-called, the strength of the United States. And he's just furtherance, a furtherance of that, really. His interest is to further that. And transactional, wherever he makes a deal, he makes a deal. In the interest of America. And America hegemony, in terms of America. That's just the way it is, And he's the apex of that. To me, he's the alpha of that. He understands the presidency and the majesty of the presidency, and he uses it.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hey, good evening, Webbo. Listen.
Yes.
I want to know, when you build the expensive nursing home, when they're building the expensive nursing home, what are they going to build for the local? A poorhouse?
This is just a private enterprise, so it's not government.
I know, but what the government going to build for the poor people? They probably going to build a rich one, but what are you going to build for the poor? A poorhouse?
I suppose opportunities.
What?
Opportunities.
I mean, you guys just speak like 5th grade and 6th grade. I'm more but you guys can't just be more expressive than that, especially the guy brand. Let me tell you something. If me be selling mango for $5, a rich man will come in and buy them out and sell them for $20. The poor people will never benefit. The same thing with the damn property. They'll never find property for the poor people, but they'll find the sell out to the high end. Mark go every year to Florida campaigning to the high end individuals to come here to make money, but yet the poor people them poor. You know what's gonna happen? You see all them fire and thing what been going on in Haiti? Haiti always kept the lead, you know.
No, okay, here.
When
Hello, walk.
Hello. You know what happened? Equity.
Ain't gonna think no fire and thing here. You got someplace else with the fire. Yeah, Naya.
So, what do you think of? That gesture of ridding Syria of these embargoes and so forth? It's a slap in the face of Israel.
Listen, if the United States has won that, so-called proxy war, basically that's what they're saying. From what I'm getting, if they have won the war, then Israel would not be slapped in the face. Because now they've gotten rid of the leader, Assad, whose family who had been leading the country over 50 years. His father was there for maybe 30 or whatever number of years, and then he took over. So they've gotten rid of that, and they've gotten rid of all the people that are around them. And they've taken control of the country. And I think he went to Russia to live.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're now in the driver's seat in terms of doing what, expansionist capitalists do. Let me just put it that way. And that's how it works.
It seems like America seems to have a much tighter relationship with Israel more than anyone else. Do you think that's a kind of imposition, America-Israel, on the state of Syria?
It will be a imposition. It will. I mean, once the United States is in control, it will be an imposition. And it's a seismic shift in terms of Syria and its policy and the people who supported the Assads.
You think that gesture have to do with you think that gesture have to do with that moving out of the Palestine into neighboring countries? That gesture of
it's all coordinated.
It's all coordinated.
Yeah, man. It's all coordinated. I mean, the Gaza Strip, moving it from the Gaza Strip, you're saying.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know how long the Gaza Strip they found oil. Great, I think they said great pools of oil in that area. And the problem was, how do you get from Israel, on the Gaza Strip and get access? I don't know if you know the map. Yeah, but the Gaza would be an impediment to that. No, okay, fine. So when you hear, for example, the President of the United States, we're going to build a Monaco, along the Gaza. You know what Monaco is what is it called, a city-state, or something like that? Enclave, city-state, yeah. That's a Monaco, and when you do that, that's what you create. Because it's right on the coastline, it's on the water's edge as well. You see where this is going? And so I mean, you could very well see where this is going. I mean, it is that's how this game is played between the East and the West.
Okay, so then you think Israel is quite comfortable with that new relationship that seems to be forming between.
Because
thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening.
Yes.
I am so disappointed with the last caller, because I believe when we are doing programs so important like this, I'm here listening to this program, it is so healthy. And if people don't understand a program, they could call in and ask you all to refine it. Not to speak how the person last was speaking, I don't want to go back to it, but just to mention, this is a very good program. But something that is hurting me for the last 40 years of my life is this. I have grown up in this country, St. Kitts Nevis, which I love so much as anyone. But I always hear the term poor people. But no one in St. Kitts Nevis grew up poorer than me. But I'm rich now. Rich in love, rich in some wealth, rich in looking after people.
we are not poor. It's how we place ourselves in society, and we have grown up with a dependency on the government, and it's scaring me. I don't really call in on radio like before, but I want to tell you all tonight, this is a very good program. I enjoy every bit of it. Very healthy. I did not even realize the gentleman there who I normally discuss when I come to Nevis on Saturday in Carbo Shop. I didn't even know he had such wealth of knowledge. I enjoyed the program so much. But we got to be careful how we call in on radio and be so disrespectful. We have to learn to respect different views. And I'm a little bit hurt about the section with the sales of property in Nevis. But it's appeared to me like what I'm hearing is that not enough Nevisians actually selling the property, or the properties, I don't know if I'm hearing right. That is something we got to work on. In our country, let me ask the government quietly tonight, Carlton, Elroy, Emmanuel, Rastafari without locks, asking the government, please, not to sell out our people. You all have a good night. The program fabulous.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening. Yes.
Yes, so, that is where we are in this world right now, Naya and Webbo. The board changes. The players on the board changes. Just moving around moving around the ponds, that's all that is. And acquiring as many ponds as possible. And that's basically what it's about. It's not going to change. It's been going on from the beginning of time. So the Soviet Union, or Russia, and you have China now, is in the game of moving around the ponds. And they're moving around the ponds in terms of Belt and Road Initiative, which is the Silk Road they've dreamed of and building. Access points to trade, because the United States has locked up all the trading lanes, meaning they use the 7 fleets to control the trading lanes of the world. The 7 fleets, basically, each fleet is a country. We're talking military fleets. You know what I mean? With aircraft carriers and AWACS and everything. And each of those fleets carry about 80 to 90 fighter jets on them. There were 7 fleet, 6 fleet, and across the oceans. And they control all trading routes. So they can sabotage trade at any point. The United States can do that. Interrupt or interdict trade at any point. So China has to now try to see. China is trying to do the Silk Road Initiative, which is the Belt and Road. Same thing. Basically, what they're doing is building ports and building airports all over the world for countries, so they can get access points. And that is what the whole Panama thing, get out of Panama, was all about with Trump. To control it. You cannot control this trading point. This is big business. It's a big deal. And American hegemony is important to the West. Both sides are doing the same thing. But if you're in control of what you're in control, you're not going to see it. I keep saying we almost got to the brink of war in '61 in Cuba when Russians came in and decided to put in nuclear missiles in Cuba. You cannot come to the West. There was an agreement, and that is why they rushed to sign all these so-called treaties after that. Nuclear disarmament treaties. Because that came out of all that, because they get so close. So I'm saying to you, it's just the way we do things, and we all are, like I always say, we all have a bully. Yes, in your house, you're growing up, you had a bully. In the school, you had a bully. There's always a bully in life.
Yeah, with all that being said, I must say, you know what? Some people are so poor, all they have is money.
There you go. You're brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. They have no sense of self or sense of being or who they are.
Correct. So that's the last word. This program repeats tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening for On the Map. Join Keith Scarborough on Thursday evening at 8 o'clock for Government at Work. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. You all have a wonderful evening.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertising.
With all the power from the tower.